Good morning, good morning, good morning. How is everybody today? I hope you're doing good. I'm doing good. I'm a little bit crazy. I've had a crazy week of travel. We had art conference last week. I heard Cassie did a great job speaking on diligence. One of the things I love about sisterhood is it just gives me the opportunity to push forward some of our next generation communicators, because you people are so easy to talk to. I mean, just easy to talk to, and it's a great place to gain confidence and to just get your feet wet with speaking. So thank you for receiving her, and I just heard great things about her. I'm sure we'll hear some more about her as time goes on. But okay, so I want to tell you a story that has nothing at all to do with my message, but apparently if I don't say something funny at the beginning, you won't listen to me. That's what I hear from all the communication experts. So this will truly be funny though, because you heard my story by now about my house, and we found numerous kinds of animals inside, rats, squirrels. We also got a dog. That was an animal we let in by choice. But we're getting some construction done on our house to address the mold issue. And because of that, we're having puppy containment problems. You know what I'm talking about? Like, we had these baby gates, and when Juno was a puppy, she's the cutest puppy ever. I'll show you a picture of her next week because she's the most adorable thing. I'll put one on the slide. But little tiny black lab, she's so cute. But anyway, when she was a puppy, the baby gates worked. So I've got one that's made of like iron or something. It's really strong. She can't knock that down. But now that she's bigger, the plastic one is just not even, she laughs at it. She just laughs at it. So she's learned how to knock down the plastic baby gate. When it's, so many kitchens do. You've got a kitchen, it's got one entry over here and one entry over here, and one goes to the dining room and one goes to the living room. And so she takes a running leap at the gate and just knocks down the path into the living room. Well, basically, so now she's out and about the house and there's construction. So for whatever reason, I decided that it would be best to leave the back door open for her to go in and out as she needs to go to the bathroom. I'm busy. I can't always pay attention to her. So I was working from home that day. And while the back door is open, birds find their way into my house. So first it's just one bird, and then that bird decides that it needs a friend. It's trying to get out. It can't. So I've got this thing where I've got like bookshelves in my family room, and then there's a window over it, a big window, but all you see through the window is trees. So stupid bird, she keeps trying to fly into the window and land in a tree. It's really sad, and I've never actually seen a bird like knock itself silly on a window pane before, and it's really sad. So I went and stood out in my screen patio and went like I'm trying to call it. It just won't. She flew in the door, but she won't fly low enough to get out the door. Then she starts calling for a friend. She sends out a distress signal. You can imagine how much this upset me. So, but unfortunately, rather than finding her way out, she brought another bird in. So now there's two birds in my house. My dog, labs are bird dogs, she's crazy. She's not trying to knock down every gate. She cannot be contained. She's running all over the house. The birds are flying up and down the stairs. They're pooping everywhere. It was insane. So I tried as hard as I could to get the birds out of my house. They would not leave. I had to go get my kids from school. So I shut the back door. Juno was roaming free all over the place, just chasing them down. Every so often they nest on tops of the bookcases and stuff. So I come back. I drop Annabelle at dance. Kaylin has play practice. I drop Stovey off, and I said, son, we've got to get these birds out of my house. Because Stovey's a 12-year-old boy. So we've got to get these birds out of the house. I've got to go do this errand and have a meeting. And when I come back, maybe you can think of a way that you can capture these birds. Because he's he's really good with animals. He's Wild Kingdom. So I come back after my meeting only to find my son, who's now alone in the house. Workers are gone. There's no girls. It's just him in his underwear. Now, I don't know what it is about middle school boys, but the first thing they want to do when they get home is take their pants off. It's something in the male gene. They need to take their pants. So he's in his underwear and his Crocs, and he's got his air-propelled Nerf gun. Okay? He has, if you follow me on Instagram, my son is a big hunter. He loves to hunt. He's like hunted, he shot a kudu, he shoots ducks, he shoots geese, he loves quail hunting, the whole thing. So he has shot this poor bird. I know, it's a little bit, but I was a little bit proud too, because if we ever have an apocalypse, I'm going to eat. So this is what I thought. You don't know how weird it is in here. So I'm sitting there watching him just as he has his Nerf gun. He shot it enough to wound it and making it fall. I walk in just as he's breaking its neck. I know it's awful, but okay, this is what, I know it was really sad. I was like, Stovey, oh my gosh. And he goes, well, I couldn't figure out how, there's poop on the walls and on the window. The bird has been, literally itself because it's so scared of my son. And so the dog is freaking out, but that's just one bird. The other bird is still here. He throws that one in the marsh, and then there's this one bird, and it's in our house, and it's scared silly. And so finally, at like 9:30 that night, Stovey couldn't get the other bird. The dog is insane. It won't go in its kennel. And so my husband, with his pants on, not in his underwear, I did also make my son finally go put pants on. I was like, you can't, this is too early to do this. Like, you're just giving up for the rest of the day. Go put pants on. You're not there yet. So then my husband finally that night gets the other Nerf gun, shoots down the other bird. It was like 9:30, and the bird falls, and our dog finally gets the bird, runs around with it. She would not let go of it. But of course, my husband loves this because he's like, Carrie, look at her. She's a natural bird dog. Look at her. Look how soft her mouth is. And I'm just like, I just want the animals out of my house, the poop off of my walls, off of my windows. I don't want my dog to get worms. And so finally, that was the story. It was entertaining, though, wasn't it? Nothing to do with the message. I just thought you might like a window into my world. I am surrounded with hunters. If we ever have an apocalypse and you need food, come see me. My husband and my son will be shooting down some kind of animal, I can promise you. All right, so we're talking about relationships today. See how that had nothing to do with relationships? But anyway, I'm so enjoying this series. And can you believe after this week, we only have 2 weeks left? We're going to talk about integrity next week, and then I'm going to come back at the end and sort of look at Proverbs 31 and show how she shows all of these characteristics that we've been studying. It's going to be a great way to end the semester, and then we go into Shine. Oh my gosh, it's going to be so great to be at Shine. And Rachel, I don't know if you quite got this from what Rachel was saying, but one thing that we're doing different this year for Shine is we're adding only for the night sections childcare for children 5 to 10. So if you have kids who are not nursery age, we can't provide that care during the day, but at the night sessions, you can bring your school-age children up to age 10, and we can provide childcare for that. However, you do have to pre-register them for that. So I just want to let you know that's a change. We have heard your cry. We're doing the best we can. Okay. All right, relationships. Open your books up to page 46 is what we're starting on today. And you might notice some of these points because I was so gracious as to give my husband a few weeks ago some of my notes from this message. Some of them may have found their way into a Sunday morning message. So don't be surprised if you recognize. Yes, my mother-in-law came to me. She goes, "You wrote this message, didn't you?" And I was like, well, yes, I did. Some of it. She recognized it from there, but you may have recognized a little bit of some of our study in there, which I was very honored that he found it useful to use on a Sunday morning. But this just to open up our opening verse, Proverbs 12:26, reading from the New King James says, "The righteous should choose his friends carefully, for the way of the wicked leads them astray." So just relationships. There is so much about relationships in the book of Proverbs, just so much about it. And relationships are so important. And honestly, they're so important to our lives as believers. And they're not just something that we have on the earth to keep us from being bored. You know, that's not why God gives us friends. He doesn't give us friends so that we won't be bored and we'll always have something to do. That's a great, happy consequence of having friends. But God intended our friends to be a real vehicle of spiritual growth. And I want to just kind of start off by comparing and contrasting, you know, the way that we view friendships in our culture and our time in history. And it's not bad. It's just really different from the way that the Hebrews would have viewed relationships in their time in history, and even the way that the Apostle Paul would have looked at friendships in his time in history. And it's not that we need to try to go back and become like the ancient Hebrews or the first century Jews, but sometimes understanding the context that the writers of the Bible were speaking into helps us to get greater revelation about how we can apply these principles to our context. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges of reading the Bible and studying it, is that it's written to a context and in a context that's so vastly different. Not just time as a barrier, but culture is also a barrier. And in many cases, language is also a barrier, because the language seems, you know, just old and outdated, you know, and even sometimes the sentence structure is so complex, and it's in verses and chapters, and it just can seem hard to dig through all that and find how you can take these things off of the pages of the Bible and put them inside your daily life. And so it's just good to look, as we're talking about relationships, at what relationships were like back then and what they are like right now. So I just set up this nifty little table. It's right in your notes right here on page 46. And I'm just going to go through it and maybe point out a few things. And this is a super simple message today, because, you know, relationships should be simple. How many of you love to have uncomplicated friends? I love uncomplicated friends. I love my complicated ones. Love them. But the people that I really love to do a lot of things with are the uncomplicated friends, because life is just complicated enough, isn't it? And I mean, I'm in a complicated season of my life right now. I am thankful for the friends that can go through it with me, but we don't want to stay in a complicated place, right? We want to move through them. They're there to stretch us, but they're not there to be our permanent habitation, right? So, so here we go. I'm going to go through this little table here on page 46. It says what modern culture values versus what ancient Middle Eastern culture values. So the ancient Middle Eastern culture is where the book of Proverbs was written into. That's the context. So first of all, we value today solitary prayer and study. And when we think of, I'm going to go pray, the first thing we think is I'm going to get alone with Jesus. We think of prayer as a solitary activity. And when we have prayer meetings at church, that's a bit of an exception, and we love those too. But typically, most of our prayer is done alone, right? That's what we think of with prayer. Well, in the ancient Middle East, they actually, when they thought of prayer, the first thing that would come to their mind was a group setting. Solitary prayer was not nearly as common as group prayer. So group prayer and study were a group activity. The second thing is when we interpret scriptures, we value private interpretation and application of the scriptures. So we like to sit alone and read the Bible and think of how it applies to our life. And that's okay too. We obviously want to make sure that we're reading the Bible correctly. And if we don't understand something, go seek out some teaching on it or ask someone. But we pretty much say, well, this is how this applies to my life, and that's okay. But what they would do is they would say that worship, I skipped one. Let's just stick with this. They would have communal interpretation and application of scriptures. So they would gather together and read the Torah or read their holy books together, and then they would talk about what it means, and they would agree on an interpretation or refer to a rabbi, very much like what you do at your tables or what you might do in a Devo group. If you're doing a Devo group, you're reading a passage of scripture, and together you're maybe wrestling with the meaning or talking about how it applies to your life. A lot of that is also what you do at table time. So I like that we provide a context to use that kind of model. If you look up, I skipped one, personalized private worship experiences. We really value that. Just wanting, like, this kind of group likes to worship this way. This kind of group likes to worship this way. You know, we see this trend among churches. That's not a bad thing. It's just, it's just a way that we do church in our modern life. But you might have a church that has a traditional service where there are hymns sung and things, very few instruments. And then you might have, at that same church might have a contemporary service where you're going to have drums and keyboards and a more modern approach to music. That's a personalized approach to worship. That's what we value here. Well, in the Middle East, they would value worship experiences for the whole community or even for the whole nation. So when it was time for a holiday, let's say you were celebrating Passover, you didn't have a separate worship set for Passover that had drums and one that had an organ. They all had the same thing. They didn't value personalized worship experiences like we do. So that's kind of interesting how they did that. And again, please understand, I'm not saying that we need to go back to this or one is better than the other. It's just good to understand this because it leads to a point of view on relationships.